You're listening to SM Media, the home of exclusive West of Scotland Football League content. Hi, folks, and welcome to the latest episode of the SM Media West of Scotland Football Show. I'm Scott McPike. It's an absolute pleasure to be your host. I'm delighted to welcome my special guest this week. It is a pleasure to welcome on Tony McInally. Tony, thank you very much for taking the time to join me. It's a pleasure.
Thanks very much, Scott. Thanks for asking me, and apologies I didn't come on a few weeks ago when we were in the semi-finals and whatnot. It was just a busy period for us, so thanks for having me and thanks for your patience.
It's an absolute pleasure, and as I say, we've obviously had this in the pipeline for a few weeks, and we finally get round to it. Tony, that's a tough one. I'm not going to lie. I don't really know. When we were planning out this podcast originally, it was a plan that you'd still be in a job. What happened? Just that's what
um,
happened.
what happened was effectively, we played Irvine Meadow on a Saturday, and John Gall came in and he said that he was thinking of making a change at the end of the season, but he just wanted to call it quits there and then with 3 of the 4 of the management team, which beggared belief, and he gave us no reason for making that change. The only thing I can really say is that I had called John out the previous week or so. I'd told him that I'd been told from very, very good sources that he had went behind my back and was speaking to another manager about taking the job at the end of the season. And I told him who it was. It was Michael Oliver from Ashfield. I had been told, from a lot of different sources that he had been speaking to him about taking over. John denied that, so we'll just let and see who was telling the truth. At the end of the day, I can honestly say I gave everything and I gave my very best to Darvel, this season. And, so we'll see who was telling the truth, myself or John Gall, come the season's end, and who the new manager of Darvel will be in due course.
Tony, I think people talk at this level. Like you hear things before they become public. It's fairly common knowledge that I think there was rumours beforehand, and again, you hear different things. And what I like to do is ask about from the people who are mentioned in the rumours and trying to get a bit of information. And I honestly say, like this, by the time I'd kind of tried to do a wee bit of digging on this, it was made public. So again, there wasn't enough time to get information that I thought would be quite important to what had actually happened. And that's why I think it's important that you have the right to tell your story and what happened from your point of view. And one thing I will say, in looking at the season you'd had, and I'd already had this in the notes before we'd even got to this stage, you had won a cup with Darvel. Do you know what I mean? You deserve a lot of credit for taking the side the way you have this season. And how do you look back, without obviously the way it ended, how do you look back on your time at the club in terms of the job you done, winning a trophy, potentially leading the side to the Junior Cup? Like, you must be proud of it. Despite the way it ended, you must look back with a lot of like personal pride at how it went.
Yeah, I mean, from my own perspective, when I took the job on last summer, there was a lot of promises made. I think that Darvel had came to an end of a cycle, so to speak. After Mick Kennedy had left, and maybe a lot of players wanted a change. I wasn't going to stand in the way of that change. And what ended up happening was the only things I asked the club at the time, it was John Gall, David Kerr and Mark Craig were the 3 main people. So David in the commercial side, Mark was the sporting director who I had the real good relationship with, and John, in the background as well. Well, he's the owner and he makes all the decisions. But effectively, I said that if I moved these players on, could we reinvest the transfer funds that came our way? And also any wages saved from that, could we reinvest that in some of the playing squad? Now, it was very difficult. I took the job in June. A lot of contracts are up in June the 20th. So the time I get in, it was pretty remarkable that I managed to pull together the group of players that I did in such a short period of time. The transfers that I brought in were over 6 figures. We didn't reinvest anywhere near that. I know there was a lot of talk about Jordan Moore being quite a big transfer, but apart from that, I only spent money on Dean Cairns and Leon Murphy, at that point in time. So everyone else was a free transfer that I brought in. So the wages, that I saved the club was significant. And we tried to reinvest some of that, in the playing squad. But let's just say the club at that point had made the decision to majorly downsize in terms of what they were putting into the club. So, I had to live with that, although I felt pretty let down. Then, come September, you obviously know the club put out a statement to say about it's sustainable, being a sustainable club. At that point, some players were sold behind my back, which I didn't know about, like Scott Ferguson and whatnot. And we lost, my captain Ian McShane, we lost Thomas Riley, etc., etc. So my gut was really telling me at that time that it was like a series of broken promises. So what do I do? But at that point, I could see the green shoots of the team that I'd put together. I could see that was a group of players that I enjoyed working with. They were a really honest group. I could see the potential in them. And in some games and some weeks and some months, I started to see flashes of what they could actually do. So, I spoke to my management team, and it was purely out of care for the players. I'm a players manager. I really liked the group. They were an honest bunch and they were giving me everything. And I felt that group could maybe do something. And month on month, October went into November, into December, we started to string together 5, 6, 7, 8 results, on the belt. And then I started to see this team's got something. They had levels in them. And what I was seeing was that when I was asking them to up their game, particularly in cup games or big league games, they were finding it. And I noticed, because we won the West of Scotland a couple of weeks ago. That's my 14th trophy as a manager. Over 4 different clubs. And what I could see a team that was a cup team this year. I knew we were consistently inconsistent to win the league because it was like win one, draw one, lose was, win two, draw one, lose one. We just weren't consistent enough in the league. But we had the potential to beat, anyone on our day, and I felt that had the ingredients of being a good cup team. So, I look back in my time at Darvel. I'm super proud of what the management team and the players done. The dressing room were fantastic. A great group of boys. I could see them grown together month on month. They got closer. We galvanised after that statement in September, October. But, I look back at it tinged with a lot of sadness because there was a lot of broken promises in there. And if we were just allowed to do the job the way that I wanted it to do, they could have become a really, really sustainable club because budget in the past has not bothered me. I've won the Scottish Cup with Shotts Bonaccord. The average wage of the players was £32.50. So it can be done. But you just need to get togetherness. You need to just go down a different route. Younger players, hungrier players, and they grow again. And with your coaching and development, then they become better players, and that's really the crux of it. So I do look back in a lot of pride. I just feel as if I wasn't. I think I deserved to take the team out in the Scottish Junior Cup final, having got them there. I felt I deserved to lead the team out on the day, and as does the dressing room. The dressing room has been very, very vocal to the club officials about the way that we were treated, myself, Stuart Ralston and Brian Whelan. It was pretty disgusting, but, that's not in my head. That's not in my head. We done our very, very best.
And obviously, like in terms of the final, Davy Winters is going to lead the team out, and I think it's fair. Well, obviously, like I think we're all in agreement that you deserve the opportunity to take the team out, and I think it's obviously quite bad what's happened. But like Davy's going to lead the team out, and I think it's good to have that bit of continuity and the players. I think like Davy obviously as well, someone I know you're very close with, and I know was a big part of the Darvel journey with you, and I'm kind of speaking to you a couple of times and kind of speaking to people connected to Davy. There's a lot of real pride in the journey you've had to get to the Junior Cup final again. Darvel, I think something like 47 years or something since they last got to a final. So it's a remarkable achievement. You'll be remembered as a guy, but looking at the game coming up in June, how proud are you that Davy's going to stay and hopefully kind of for yourselves get that job done, and that will obviously kind of still mean that you'll be part of it somehow. Like I know it's a tough one to address, but Davy's going to be the man to lead it out. Are you proud of him? Are you pleased that he's going to get that opportunity?
Well, David took, John Gall spoke to David separately from us. David made the decision to stay. He wanted to stay and give continuity to the players. The players had made it very, very obvious that they were not going to play for another management team this year. If that was the case, then they would have taken the team. They would have been the club were told they would play the under-20s. Because the players would have just basically said they weren't playing. Or the players were going to take it themselves. So David staying in there gives the players continuity. That's David's decision to do that. But I'm certainly of the opinion that when you're a management team, you're all together, you're all in and you're all out. So, David taking the team, it's up to him. He made that decision. He's a grown man. He makes his own decisions. And, but it wouldn't have been me. If John Gall had come in and said David was fired, Biscuit was fired and Stuart was fired, then I would have walked out the door with them. But that's my morals and that's my principles as a manager. And I think that's the right thing. That's the right morals and principles.
And obviously the league as well as a whole, when you'd said about this, obviously like there was a lot made about the budget and the fee for Jordan Moore, and there was a lot made about a couple of months after that a statement coming out. Could you see the club going in a different direction? And I know John's leaving at the end of the season, and there obviously is going to be a massive change that you can imagine. But did you see the club kind of going in a different direction the more you kind of after that? Because that statement came out the blue. Like nobody saw that coming, and after that, you were kind of. I mean, I certainly thought like that's a weird statement to bring out just when the fee going about, we know for Jordan and things like that. But a couple of months after that, to then put out a statement like that, I just found it very bizarre, Tony. And I don't know what your thoughts of that was, and like, could you see a change at that point? Could you see the club going in a direction that you were told it wasn't going?
Absolutely. Being in the inside in the inner sanctum of Darvel at that point in time, you could see the downsizing was gathering pace. Let's just say, the investment in the pitch was going down, and you can see the difference in the pitch this season from previous seasons, which has an impact on how you try and play. Other things that I noticed, big changes was, things like the data vests and stuff like that. That stopped. So that was something that was reduced, and it was just week by week, month by month, we saw the difference. When you were in there, you saw the downsizing happening dramatically. To the extent that players at different stages in the season, were a bit concerned about where it was coming from. But thankfully, the work that David Kerr done earlier in the season, in terms of the commercial and the sponsorships, a guy called Frank Hill had come in and he started to bring in the sponsorship and the commercial stuff. So, that had a big say. But the biggest loss to me was Mark Craig leaving Darvel. I always felt that he kept everything on an even keel in the playing side. I think, his nickname's Franco. I always felt Franco, was someone that you could go and you could have an honest conversation with. He would give you, good feedback, whether you like to hear it or not, but at least he gave you feedback on what was happening. And, Mark Craig, for all the time he was at the club before he resigned after a fallout with John Gall about 3 months ago, he always told you the truth, and I liked that about Mark Craig. He was very, very open and honest, and very candid in his feedback. But at least you know where you stand. When that happens, rather than being told, broken promises in the background. Oh, it'll happen, and it doesn't. and you begin to question yourself. But as I said earlier, my gut was screaming at me in September that I should have left at that point, as was my management team. But we decided to stay on purely for the players, because they were a great group, and it would have been wrong since we had signed their players to have walked away, 3 months into the season.
We'll obviously move into the kind of what's been happening over the weekend, and obviously we'll kind of touch on the kind of remainder and what's kind of next for you, Tony, kind of later on in the show. In terms of the action over the weekend, obviously we knew obviously that Bede had won the league, and obviously the kind of league, most of the clubs have kind of ended their season. The opponents in the Junior Cup final, Arthurlie, their kind of fate was sealed, despite beating Bede 5-0. Which I think is a remarkable result and one that will give them a massive boost going into the final. Arthurlie and Rob Roy were relegated to the First Division. Glenafton obviously secured their safety. Brilliant result, 5-0 win over Cumnock on Friday night. I think with Glenafton, obviously, and I don't know what your thoughts are about this, like Glenafton, I think have been really, really solid. They've been able to get some really good results in recent weeks. And the one thing about Arthurlie and Rob Roy next season, we know that league, the First Division, is so hard to get out of, but they've got two really good managers who know the level, and I think that's a good bit of consistency they will have next season.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to go on record to congratulate Chris Strain and his Bees team. They were the standout team for me this season. We had played them 3 times, and we had 3 cracking games against them. We beat them 2-1 at Darvel. They beat us 3-2 at Bellsdale in the league. So it was 2 smashing games, 2 top teams going at it toe to toe. No quarter given, no quarter asked, but a really, really competitive couple of games. And then we prevailed in the West of Scotland Cup, in penalty kicks. So, I thought Bees were the best team overall. I thought they were the most effective team in terms of togetherness, team spirit, how they were shaped up. They scored a lot of goals. They had a threat. They had a threat on the counter. Defensively, they were pretty solid as well. So, they deserved it. Although there was another couple of teams that really caught my eye. I thought St Cadoc's were easy on the eye. Martin Fellows deserves a lot of credit there. Clydebank probably had a good middle of the season, and Moff will maybe be a wee bit disappointed how it ended for him. Largs came like a train, but I thought Largs were always going to come good. They're a very, very well organised, well-drilled team. Arnie takes a lot of credit for that, but they've got some smashing players in their ranks and they're the right age. But, looking at the other end of the table, I've got to congratulate Ryan Caddis at Glenafton. I think when he came in, I think Caddy's got a great chance to be a really good manager, not just now, but in the future. I think he went out and learned the ropes at Craig Mark and stuff like that, and I think he took Witless for a small spell. Was that right?
Yeah.
Was it a month? Yeah. And he's come into Glenafton, so he's made maybe a lot of mistakes away from the limelight of the Premier Division, but he knows football, he knows players. I had him as a player at Cumnock. I really, really like Ryan. I think he's got a big, big future as a manager. So congratulations to him to secure Glenafton status. In terms of Rob Roy and Arthurlie, I think Arthurlie had a really, really poor start to season, but I think the last 6 months Arthurlie have been really, really good. They've beaten a lot of teams. They've had great cup runs. Colin Riley's probably had a look at the league and said, I need to change X, Y, and Z. He's done it. And, they've finished like a train. I think they drew with Talbot. They've beat Bees. I think they beat Hurlford back to back. I think they drew with Pollock. They've strung together an impressive set of results. Obviously beating and drawing with Johnsonborough in the Scottish. So, great credit for Colin for the end of the season. But it'll be tinged with disappointment for him. I think maybe how they started the season or the first 3 or 4 months, maybe they should have picked up more points. In terms of Rob Roy, good, young, hungry, energetic side. Danny Ferry's in there as a manager and Goldie's the head of it. I think they're in the South Challenge Cup final, I believe.
Yeah,
so they'll be hungry for that. But given the resources that Rob Roy's got, it's not really a surprise. I don't think they've got the biggest budget in the league. Although I'll often say, I've never played against a guy called Budget that scores goals, but it does help if you have got some budget to go and get better players. And I think Rob Roy, have had to go down a younger route. And unfortunately for them, they didn't pick up enough points, to do that. Irvine Meadow, I think everyone could see that Irvine Meadow were, probably the poorest team in the league by some distance. And, they conceded over 100 goals. And, over the course of the season, I think it's been tough for the various managers that have been in there. I think Ben's the third manager, who's a good lad, who takes the under-20s. But, next season, I think Arthurlie will bounce back. Rob Roy have the opportunity. Irvine Meadow may rally as well, but as you know, that league below is unforgiving, and there's a lot of good teams and a lot of hungry teams want to do well and come out of that league into the Premier League.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of those sides that have made the jump into the Premier Division next season, and I think this will give you a massive kind of wee feel as well. At the start of the season, and I've received no end of pelters for this, but I had shots finishing certainly not in the promotion places, and I've taken my hat and I accept it. I have been on record for months on end. John has done a marvellous job at shots, and to get shots out of that league, I think, is a monumental achievement.
Brilliant achievement. Really, really pleased for John. Everyone at Shots, everybody knows who knows me knows how much I feel about Shots. A brilliant club, and I'm so pleased, for John, who's an old neighbour. He's from Rutherglen. I know him really well. I know his family really well. I was super pleased for him and delighted for all these players. We played them in the Western Scotland Cup, and they're a real handful. And he's got a real togetherness, great team spirit. They all work for one another. They work really hard, and I was really pleased. I was kind of hoping they would win the league, but I think the games caught up with them at some point, Scott. And also, I think they played Drumchapel and Johnsonborough back to back, and they didn't take any points from that. Whereas if they had, I think maybe that would have given them a chance to win the league, because I think they're still playing. I think they've still got 2 games to play.
2 games left, yeah.
So, yeah, but I think probably the 3 best teams there have came up. Drumchapel have been really consistent under Hopi all season. Johnsonborough, under Jamie had done well, lost their way maybe for a month, but Murdy's come in, steadied the ship, and I think he put on 6 wins back to back and went from mid-table into the promotion place. So, well done to, Johnsonborough, Drumchapel, and especially to Shots for me.
Yeah.
Delighted for them all.
Absolutely. And again, it's just such a, as you say, I think it's quite true, an unforgiving league. And I think there's a lot of sides in there who are just going to rally again next season. I think it's got the makings of another brilliant league. Down at the bottom end, obviously, Maple secured their survival at the weekend. Obviously, they beat Drumchapel, at Drumchapel, and obviously meant Cambuslang went down. Cambuslang, it's been a tough one to assess all season. They've obviously just struggled, and kind of, I think Paul does deserve a lot of credit for the job he's done there. It's been a tough situation. And you just hope that Cambuslang, they can find a bit of something out of somewhere, and you don't want a big name like that to be down there for long, and that they deserve a turn of luck, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I come from in and around Rutherglen, Cambuslang, and so I know the potential and I know the size of the likes of Glencairn and Cambuslang, and 2 big clubs, well supported clubs, and Cambuslang recently they've had one really good team, that came up, and then they lost a lot of players, and then this year they've not had as good players. But the second half of the season they've brought in some young players, some really interesting and exciting young players, but maybe a bit young just now. But I'm sure Paul will get a hold of them and rally them for next year. And I'd be pretty confident of Cambuslang bouncing back up, if I'm honest. Out of that. But Mayball, you've got to give them credit. They've rallied. They've picked up a couple of nice results, over the previous weeks. I think they beat Drumchapel, obviously. I think they beat St Rochs, who were on a real run. So they've done well to escape. But I think, Ross Robertson coming in there up front for them has helped them massively. So, well done to Mayball as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Into the second division, obviously, we knew that Ardross and Vale of Clyde and Cumbernauld, there were 3 predictions I did get right, and I'm quite chuffed at that. I think they're the only 3 I get right out the whole season. In terms of that league as well, there's a lot of good sides. I think Kevin as well, I think he'll be looking to go again next season. Kilsyth, Muirkirk, I think Ross has done a marvellous job in there. You've got Larkhall, Maryhill, a lot of good sides in that league as well. But I think the top 3, we spoke about it a lot. The 3 sides as well that could kick on next season.
Definitely. We played Ardross Winton in the West of Scotland Cup, and I was very impressed with them. The job that Gavin and Gowser have done there is tremendous, and I know they've signed a couple of players on pre-contract who are Premier League players, so they will kick on again. They've got the infrastructure there to do well, and I'm sure they'll be very, very competitive in the Championship League next year. Vela Clyde, John Hughes has done really well. They've been, in fact, they've been very consistent this year. They've regularly picked up results, and delighted for John. In terms of Cumbernauld, they've got some exciting players there. So Nizzy and Dolsey there, they've done well. I think Cumbernauld were probably the team that were going to push Ardrossan for the Championship, but just kind of fell away there in the last month or so. But delighted for George Watson, the owner at Cumbernauld. He's a great guy, and really pleased. But it's funny, we've played a couple of teams in that league this year. I was really, really impressed with Kilsyth Rangers.
Yeah.
Bailey Hanlon's team, they were really good. They played against us, I think it was in the Scottish Cup, and they done really well. And we played Larkhall in the Scottish Cup, who were a good young side as well, under under Crawford. And so I mean, we've played 3 teams in that league, and I've been really impressed by how they've tried to play. They've stuck to their beliefs, and they went toe to toe with us, every one of the teams. They didn't sit back and say, oh, 5-4-1 and just stay in a shape and wait for free kicks and stuff like that. No, they actually gave it a go. And, so it's credit that shows it down in the second division. Teams are trying to play the right way.
And down at the other end as well, I think Wishaw had given it a real good go, and they just obviously come up short. They won 4 games in a row, but their fate was sealed. Obviously, they lost 3-0 away to Cumbernauld as well. I think with Wishaw, obviously, they kind of came good towards the end, but they just had a really disappointing start, and it was an uphill battle. They obviously changed manager, and again, you think as well, they're another side. They're a big name that probably shouldn't be in the position they're in. But again, all they need just a wee ton of luck, and I think they'll do pretty well again next season.
Yeah, I think their start to the season was really poor, and changing the manager disrupted them for quite a period of time. And but they stabilised after Christmas and started to get results. Just maybe a little bit too much too late, so to speak. And but knowing guys like Alec Young and stuff like that at the club, they'll want to go again. They'll be energised in the summer. And I'm sure they'll be looking to bounce straight back up from the third division, back into the second. But, Perthshire and I think it was Glasgow Uni went down with them. So, I haven't seen any of those 2 teams. But, I thought that second division was a pretty competitive league, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, absolutely. In the third division, obviously, there's still a bit to play for. Lanark are obviously won as champions. Les Mahago clinched promotion as well. Massive congratulations to them. The way the third division, it's all down to the Threave have to obviously Threave win their next game. They're the last game of the season. They're promoted. They will play Lanark on Wednesday, so that'll be interesting. If Threave obviously they need to win it because they're 3 points behind Bells Hill. And again, Les Mahago, they've had a really good end to the season. Lanark have been so consistent, 20 wins out of 28 games. And Threave, it'd be some journey if Threave could get that third spot, but whoever gets out of Threave and Bells Hill will have deserved it.
Definitely. I mean, we played 3 in pre-season, Scott. Vinny Parker, a cracking guy. We had played 3 previously with a previous club I was at down, and they've got great infrastructure down there. It's really impressive, and they did try and play, and but it's a big game if they have to play Lanark United, who are champions, and they'll not want to kind of roll over and let them scratch their belly. I'm sure it'll be a competitive game, and 3 need to go at it, and but credit to Lanark United. I think it's Daryl Meikle,
Won the
but
last
really,
10, so they'll not be what to lose.
aye. I'm really, really delighted for my good friend Geordie Reid. He's the chairman at Lanark United, a brilliant guy, and one of my former clubs. So I had a great time at Lanark, and I know what it would mean to Lanark United to come up, not just be promoted, but be champions. Also, crucially for them, beating Les Mahago to the title. That's a big thing. So, but I wouldn't discount Bells Hill. They've got the points on the board. So Dean Muir and Paul Burns, a former player of mine, they're taking that team there. So Probably if you ask me, I would probably prefer Bells Hill, got promoted out of that because I know there's a lot of good stuff happening at Bells Hill. They've just reinvigorated the academy. Andy Scott's running that. My old manager, Rab Snedden's been in helping Bells Hill, who's a brilliant manager and a brilliant guy. And and he stays in Bells Hill, so I'm sure, it would mean a lot for Bells Hill to go up in the second division, But
Yeah.
as I say, it's all in Threeve's hands. They need to win the game to go up. So it's not a nothing game, that I don't think.
No, absolutely not. And again, we'll be covering that on Wednesday night, so stay tuned for social media coverage on that. Down at the bottom, Ardea picked up a huge result, beating Dorai 6-3 on Friday night. They have 2 games left to play. They play Les Mahago and then host Lanark. So again, they'll be looking to win at least one of those to stay up. And then Girvan and Port Glasgow. There's a point, Girvan are a point ahead of Port Glasgow. And Girvan obviously play Kilsyth, Dalry play Port Glasgow. So again, it's all to play for at the bottom as well. I think Ardea, I think Sean obviously, like I spoke to him a couple of days ago and he said we just need to get it over the line, and whoever stays safe in that, I think they'll be relieved more than anything, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes when you're down there or at the top of the league, it's about having a bit of bottle, and going into the games and, don't be scared there. Go and play the game and get the points, and prove that, you deserve to play in that league. And I'm sure the 3 managers, at Girvan, Port Glasgow and Ardea will be saying something similar. But I think it's important to go and, attack the game. Don't be fearful of what might happen, because you'd have regrets if you come off that game
Yeah.
having not given it everything, to get the point or the points to make yourselves safe. But it's all to play for there if they've all got at least one game and Ardea's got 2 to play. So you'd like to think that Ardea are probably in the box seat there, having 2 games to play.
Into the 4th division, obviously, Lugar, congratulations to them. They secured promotion back to the 3rd division. They secured it on Saturday with a 1-0 win over champions Glenvale. Massive result for Lugar, and again, like they deserve to be back in the league, and massive fair play to everybody there. I was there very early in the season, and one thing that always impresses me about Lugar is a brilliant community club, and they're always very, very kind to you. So massive congratulations to them, and it's good to see them back in
Yeah,
the 3rd division.
I'd like to echo that. Anytime I've been to Lugar, fantastic committee, fantastic community club, and I always like their setup down at Lugar.
Yeah,
I've always liked it, and so congratulations to them. Unlucky for Rossville, we played
yeah.
them in the Scottish Cup. Josh, young manager, done terrific. A lot of time for him. His team's try to play the right way, and I encouraged that, and I've kept in touch with him. Really, really pleased how he's playing. I'm sure they'll come again next year. They'll be a big threat to win that league next year, I'm sure.
I think there's a lot of sides in that league next season who'll be very good. With the Michael Pender on for Knightswood last week, they're very, very good people as well. Aaron at East Kilbride, Eglinton,
Yeah.
Rossvale, St Peters, Easterhouse, Royal Albert. There's so many sides. Saltcoats. There's a lot of sides in there that I think will be stronger next season. I think that's got the makings of a really good league. Like I think there's
Yeah.
a lot of good sides coming through at that level.
And also the good thing is all new. There's quite a lot of new clubs there.
Yeah,
So that gives a freshness to it. Also, you know, there's a lot of ambition in that league to progress through the league. So yeah, I'm sure it'll be a really good league next year. Whoever goes down, I think it's West Park and Kello went down
West
so
Park and
far.
Kellogg's
Yeah.
down. Yeah.
So, I'm sure that makes it competitive. West Park are a relatively new club as well. So I'm sure it'll be a good league. I saw Thorn, believe it or not, earlier in the season. I quite like to look at them. I think they've come up in second place in that league. They were a really young, energetic side. I liked them. I was at the game, just skipped pat on and just kept my head down. But I like to look of them.
What is your kind of thoughts, obviously, on the like somebody who's been in that kind of set up for a long time? You said you'd been at Shorts, you've been around the league. What do you think of the kind of setup now? And as you say, we're getting a lot of young sides coming through. There's a lot of really young managers coming in as well. There's a lot of really good players at this level. Is this the kind of most competitive the West's ever been?
I would definitely say so. Certainly in the Premier League and the Championship is super competitive. You know, I'd be telling lies if I knew how competitive the leagues below are, because I can't really be in two places at one time. And you're in the dugout, you know, in the Premier League, you can't be somewhere else. But certainly there's a lot of ambition, you know, in the clubs lower down the pyramid. And I know that there's other clubs, you know, that are coming into the pyramid system next year, and they'll be full of ambition and motivation to rise through there. You only need to look at teams like Drumchapel, you know, that have came through. You know, they're now in the Premier League. You know, you only need to look at that, and Gartcairn, teams like that, you know, that have risen through the pyramid and done really well. St Cadoc's, you know, is another one. So there is a lot of teams that have proved. So there's your template for these teams lower down the pyramid. If they can do it, these other teams can do it. That's for sure. And but yeah, I would say that I can only say for the West Premier League, just having, you know, been in it, it's super competitive. If you're off it 5-10%, you're beat or drawn.
Yeah.
You need to be at it all the time, and that's where winning the league that Beath have done, it's great credit to them. You know, I would say.
Absolutely.
Any team that wins the league, you know, if you look at it, Ardrossan, Lanark, Glenville, you could probably say they have won a lot of games this season, and deservedly so, and Drumchapel too.
Yeah, absolutely. Regarding yourself, Tony, before we wrap up, what's next for you, like, in the terms of the game? Are you looking to get back in? What's your kind of thoughts going forward for yourself?
I'd like to think I was a good football guy, Scott. You know, I think I've got many attributes that I can bring a football club. You know, you don't win 14 trophies as a manager at this level, and I've won every trophy. Some once, twice, some like the League Cup, I've won it 5 times. You know, I think I'm proven at the level. I think I could be an asset to any team. Just unfortunate, you know, how it panned out at Darvel, you know, but that was through absolutely no fault of my own. You know, if I was sacked for overachieving, you know, then so be it. You know, I'd rather be sacked for overachieving than sacked for mediocrity. That's for sure. I'm an ambitious guy. I've got an ambitious management team. We are very good with players. I'm a players manager. You know, I like to think that I can spot a player. I've got an eye for a player. You know, tactically, I'm switched on. So yeah, I'd like to get back in, is the truth of the matter. But my principals tell me that I've had contact from, you know, some clubs already, but my principals dictate that I don't speak to clubs unless there's no manager in place. That's just a point of principle. I think it's wrong for managers to speak to clubs when there's a manager in place. I think it's snaky. I think it's devious. If there's no manager in place, by all means speak to a club, because that's the case. But it's just my principles and morals as a manager that I would never do that. So if, you know, a job becomes available and I like the look of it, you know, I'll take a look at it and see if it's best for Tony McInally and his management team. But yeah, I think we've got a lot to offer, and I think that's proven in what we've won and what we've achieved in the game. You know, and hopefully, you know, my Darvel players in the dressing room at Darvel win the Scottish Junior Cup for themselves. Nobody else, themselves in that dressing room, and I would dearly love them to do that. You know, so that would be really nice for the club, you know, to win the first Scottish Cup in their history. They've just won their first West of Scotland Cup in their history, so why not make it a double?
Yeah, absolutely. And Tony, I can only thank you for joining me in the show, and all what I say is well done in the job you did at Darvel, and I hope you can be proud of yourself. And thank you very much for giving me your time. I thoroughly appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And
See you
thanks very
later.
much to everyone that's tuned in. Please subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels and follow our social media channels for further West of Scotland content. Thank you very much.